Adventure on Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
Wake up, America! It's time for the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY.com, West Palm Beach's #1 internet radio station. Here's your host, the Pipeman.
This is the Pipeman here on the Adventures of Pipeman W4CY Radio, and I'm here with our next guest. And I really dig having this guest because I am totally into musicians opposed to people that play instruments. And we definitely have a musician with us on the show here today. So let's welcome to the show, Rodrigues. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, I'm good. It's like a pretty cold here today. It's -8. It was -18 this morning.
Wow. What is that? What is that in Fahrenheit? Where are you at?
I'm in Toronto.
Yeah, that's what I figured. What is that in Fahrenheit?
Oh, good question.
That's probably
-18 Celsius.
Yeah, it's -18, so it's probably pretty close to zero then in Fahrenheit, something like that. But the whole world should just be on one system because it's too much work to always try to translate stuff. And, the U.S. uses one system while the rest of the world mostly uses the rest. I think we should join it. I think the metric system is way smarter than whatever we use. Like, we have to memorize when we're kids how many feet there are in a mile and how many yards there are in a mile. And it's not easy to remember because it's not in multiples of 10. So like they so hammer it in your head that it just becomes automatic, but it's not that you understand why it's that many feet or that many yards, whereas, and I love driving when you have the metric system too, because it seems like you get places quicker.
Oh yeah, indeed.
It's like, oh, we already went 60 kilometers. Man, that's great. It's also great because you think you're speeding, but you're not. It's like, oh, look at me. I'm going 110 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, indeed. And also like the pounds and kilograms and whatever.
Yeah. And so I've been to Toronto because I used to be in the investment business. And I had to go to Toronto to get a Toronto futures license because I traded futures as well as many other investments. And one thing I have to say about Canada is whoever handles investments in Canada are really good and know their stuff, because in the United States, you can fake through those tests. We call them multiple guess tests because they're all multiple choice. So you don't, like, you take classes here for the investment tests, like a 3-day blitz course. They don't want you to learn anything, just memorize so you can just go take the test and pass. Whereas in Toronto, you had to actually write like as if you were doing a master's or a doctorate. You had to write, full on essay answers, fill in blanks. Like you could not guess your way out of this exam. And so I say that in a good way because the likelihood of a scammer getting a license in your system is very unlikely compared to ours. So you have real professionals there. And I think the same thing holds true with music. I mean, I am always in awe how you have bands like Rush and other bands like them that only have 3 people and can make more music than a band of 9.
Oh yeah.
Actually, there's a
duo here. They're called Crownlands. I don't know if you heard about them.
Okay.
They sound a lot like Rush, and they're only 2 guys. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
The drummer, he plays and sings, and the guitar player does all the rest. Yeah, it's
Wow.
unbelievable. Yeah, they're fantastic. Fantastic.
That is amazing. See, I love hearing that stuff because to me, that's true musicians. You're a true musician if you don't need a lot of people in the band. And you yourself, you're a true musician as well. And so I have a question too. Like, so you're Brazilian Canadian. So were you born in Brazil or do you just have Brazilian heritage that your family's from Canada, but they're Brazilian?
No, I was born and raised in Brazil, but I moved to Canada in 2017. I'm also like have like the Canadian citizenship.
Yeah.
That's why like I can't say that like okay, I am Brazilian, but I'm also like Canadian at some point. Like these days I can't say like oh okay as I mentioned before like it's like minus 18 here, and I was like okay, so this doesn't feel like Brazil at all.
That's
right?
what I was going to say. Like, okay, first of all, I was going to say I thought Brazilians that come to the United States or North America, they only come to Florida because we have a huge Brazilian population here. But the weather's similar, okay?
Yeah, very similar, indeed.
And like people like me move from the north to the south to get away from the cold weather. And you moved from like one of the best climates, in my opinion, to one of the worst. Did you realize that was going to happen? Did you realize when you're moving, hey, I'm going to be sitting here doing an interview at 18 below?
No, and you know what? Like, you know what is funny? Like my first summer here, I was like, "What is this?" I wasn't expecting that at all.
Right?
Extremely humid. Was like no, like for I am from, it's not humid like that.
Oh yeah, see,
more like from the mountains.
Yeah,
so it is really hot, but it's not humid. When I got here the first summer, I was like, what is this? I was expecting to be like Canada, right?
Right. See? So you move to a place that has terribly hot and humid summers and terribly cold and miserable winters. That was brilliant. But I think that's where the best musicians come from. Because listen, okay, so me as an example, I'm sitting here right now doing this interview while I can also see the ocean right in front of me. And I'm like, yeah, why am I doing this interview? I want to be out there surfing. But during the winter, like in New Jersey where I grew up, during the winter, like you worked your butt off because there was nothing else to do. Basically, you hibernated, and you look at places like Canada, like Sweden, like Norway. All these places, they come out with the greatest musicians because I think these musicians just sit there and play their instrument all day long because that's all they have to do.
Indeed, I think it's it makes a lot of sense actually,
right?
And you know what? I think even the weather and all like everything here, I think I could say like I got inspired by everything, the environment or what people listen to, I think like Toronto has a huge prog scene. They're like amazing progressive metal and rock bands here. I think I can say that I got really inspired by everything here.
Nice.
And
that's what you want, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like right now, if I would, I used to play guitar and I used to play drums, but I also lived in California. And I didn't practice enough because I was too busy doing other things while it's nice out. Just like right here, I could be sitting there playing the guitar, or I could be out there outside on the water and be like, I'll practice later. But if it's winter out, I'm going to practice now, and that's all I'm going to do.
Actually, for any kind of instrument, for sure, you need a lot of time of dedication, for sure. If you really want to be like good at it, you have to spend a lot of time with the instrument, for sure. Like when I was younger, like I used to play like 12 hours per day, like sometimes like 15 hours, like for every day. Like while my friends were going to the parties, I was practicing guitar.
I love it.
But that was my choice, like I wanted to be a musician, like and since then, like I have been like a full-time musician my whole life. You know,
See,
I know
and
like
nobody's going to tell you have to do that. Usually it's the opposite. Your parents are telling you, put that down and go get a real job. You know, so it's so true. It is a choice. You're so right. And even I look at myself, okay? So when I was playing guitar in high school, the idea of playing guitar sounded great. But the idea of practicing all day, every day, like, you know, who was my idol? Randy Rhoads was one of them, and he practiced for 8 hours a day. When I found that out, I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not going to be a very good guitarist because I'm not practicing 8 hours a day, you know. And it really, I think you have to have the passion for it, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, I have a passion for music. I don't know that I had a passion for playing the instrument. I have a passion for hearing it, you know. And so there are different people like that. So thank God, because there's people like you that have the passion for the instrument, and then it's like it's kind of like magic.
Exactly.
I watch people like you, and I'm like, man, I wish I could do that. And probably with a lot of work, I could, but that's the difference. To me, it would be work. To you, it's passion.
Exactly, and it's the passion that moves you to do that. You know, okay. Oh, I'm gonna practice for like 12 hours a day. Why? Because I'm so passionate. You know, I love it so much. You know, that like that's not boring for me. You know?
Exactly.
That's what like I seen like most of this new generation of kids, because like I have been like a music teacher like since 1997, so I saw like I've seen like many different generations. You know, and I see like these days they don't have the same passion. Unfortunately, they don't have the same passion anymore. You know, they wouldn't spend like 5 hours or 8 hours with an instrument, you know.
Do you know why I think that is?
What?
I think it also ties to the reason why people don't listen to whole songs anymore.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. Like, you know, there's no real appreciation of it, is what it comes down to. And for us, when we were younger, music was a whole experience, not just listening to a few seconds of a track.
Oh yeah, exactly.
It was like you immersed yourself in this album that you spent your hard-earned money on. So you would, even if you didn't like it, you know how many albums are my favorite albums I did not like when I first heard it? You know, and it's true of a lot of people. Like sometimes you got to hear it over and over again, but it's that immersing yourself, putting my headphones on, opening up, reading the lyrics, looking at all the artwork, and listening to the whole album from beginning to finish without skipping anything. You know, nowadays, if people listen to one track on a whole album, it's a lot.
Oh yeah. Can you imagine how challenging it was for me to write one of the songs like 11 minutes long?
Right.
You know,
right?
Like, how could I expect people to listen to the entire song? Instrumental song, like 11 minutes long. You know, it's very challenging for sure. Actually, my goal was to reach 15 minutes.
Nice.
It was 15 minutes, but okay, I was happy with the 11 minutes.
Some of the best songs in history are long. Why? Because it's like therapy. Okay. You know, so to me, music's the greatest therapy, but also if you go to therapy once, it's not going to do anything for you. So to me, immersing yourself, once again, using that word, and listening to a 15-minute song, let's say, it gives you time to go on a journey, and whatever is mentally ailing you, you can disappear from. I don't think you can disappear in a minute or 2-minute song from the things that music cures.
Oh yeah.
That's just my viewpoint.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
I love what you said about, okay, so I'm glad you brought up about being a music teacher, because you're going to laugh now, because one of the other things is, like, I remember when I was first taking guitar lessons, and all I wanted to do was play songs, as most of your students are probably the same way.
Oh yeah.
And the teacher had me doing these scales over and over and over again, and I was like, bump this is no fun. But that's why I never got good, though. You need that foundation, and like maybe it's not as much fun in the beginning, but nothing is. To get to you got to go through that to get to the fun part.
Exactly.
And,
exactly. And you know what? After you learn scales, for example, it'll be easier for you to learn songs.
Right.
Yeah. If you look at,
like, you don't think of that when you're a new student. You're thinking, this is bullshit. I just want to play music. This is garbage, but it's true what you said. Absolutely.
Yeah, I like pentatonic scale, for example. It's the first scale that the students normally learn, right? It's the pentatonic scale. Why? Because there are so many songs, classic songs. They were all the solos. They were all played with pentatonic scale. I can say Led Zeppelin's Black Dog, Stairway to Heaven, or Pink Floyd's Comfortably Numb. Like all David Gilmour solos, or maybe all Jimmy Page, or even Slash, or Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton. Like after you learn those 5 notes, after you learn those 5 notes, you get used to that sound. And it gets easier for you to memorize their solos. When
there you go.
And actually, you know what? I think there are some students, they get to that point, that they realize, okay, so I can see how important it is, because actually my technique is getting better, and also like my hearing is getting better, my understanding how the solos work better, or even like some riffs. If you look at Black Dog, for example, that's pentatonic scale.
Yeah.
Right? Breaking All the Rules by Peter Frampton, right? That's totally pentatonic scale. Like there are thousands of songs that I could name now, but I think some students, they get to that point that they realize, okay, yeah, I can see how important it is, and how actually I'm improving my playing and in my listening and my understanding about music in general too.
It's interesting too, what you were saying, because I'm thinking about, again, referencing back to my experience with it. And it's like, I think you need all that stuff, because you said about, how it sounds. I still, to this day, I can play a couple things really badly on guitar, and I have a guitar that I rarely pick up because I play it badly, but I don't have the ear from not practicing enough and not doing enough of that scales and stuff, that I don't even have an easy time tuning the guitar. I don't know what it should sound like, and I think that's the difference. Somebody that really becomes a musician, like you just said, they know what it's supposed to sound like, and they develop this ear, and I think that takes a lot of work. It's not just talent that develops that ear. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, there's a lot of work, of course. And after you learn so many songs, for example, you get used to how those chords sound together. So this is a G chord. Oh, but this is a G and a D. Like the transition of those chords, for example. Oh, this is a C, F, G, which is a very common chord progression.
Right.
And okay, but what if I change? I replace this F for D minor, for example, and why they are so similar, like your ears, they get used to that, and then your understanding about music and in your ears, they will get used to that, and you will you can learn songs easier, not only scales, but also how the chords are built, how they're organized together, why this song sounds so sad and why this song sounds so happy, for example, It's a combination of things, combination of chords and scales, and how you will build the melodies, all of that. It's the combination of all of that.
Yeah. And, you mentioned Stairway to Heaven before. And when I was going to college, and I took music theory, music appreciation, a couple other classes. In the appreciation class, this is the one thing I remembered more than anything else of any music classes or any training I took, is the professor said the key to writing a hit song is to appeal to all 3 different types of people: auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. And then he said, if you want a perfect example of the perfect song that does that, it's Stairway to Heaven. And then you have a whole different philosophy of that song after that. Because I'm also a motivational speaker, so I'm big into the auditory, visual, kinesthetic, that whole thing, and using it for training people and stuff like that. And, you know, it made so much sense because if you think about it, you know, the first verse is for the auditory. Mm-hmm. The second, the middle is for the visual, and the third is the kinesthetic. And so you appeal to all three, and that progression of the song is bringing all three types of people together. Exactly.
And it's interesting how all those parts and all of that is connected.
Yeah. Song, right? Exactly. Yeah. Which brings me, okay, so you have this new album, Tales of a Changing Life, Part 2. Yeah. And I'm always also in awe of artists, and they can keep coming up with material and writing songs. Like, I'm a published author. I have one song I've written, and I had to go to my bro and have him help me after I wrote it to turn it into a song because it was more like a book. You know, and there is definitely a technique to writing a song. And, you know, he's asking me stuff like, can you get rid of this? No, that's important. No, like I thought everything was important. And he's trying to eliminate stuff, you know, and make it more basic. And so just the idea of, you know, creating these songs, I'm always in awe of artists, how, you know, it's one thing to play somebody else's song. It's another thing to create something from scratch. Yet look at what you've done with this new album, and it's a perfect example of how good you are at that.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it.
So how does it happen with you? What goes on in your mind? Is it similar like me as an author? My book, I wrote the first part of the book in 24 hours, the first half, the second half took 6 months.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm saying? It's like,
and that was pretty fast, right?
Right.
That was fast.
But you're in this mode, and then you leave the mode, and then it took me 6 months to get back into the mode, basically. You know, and so I'm always in awe writing a whole album. Like that's even more difficult than writing a book because you're writing unique, different songs. Like a book, at least the chapters all tie together. Not always the case in an album. Like, yeah, you have concept albums, but still to tie all of that stuff together, all the music together. It's not just words.
Exactly. And that's very challenging, actually. That's what many people, they ask me, like, how you wrote like a conceptual album, but with no lyrics.
Right?
The thing is, because like, first of all, I don't sing. Like I do like some background vocals, that kind of thing. And I don't know how to write lyrics. I don't know how to express myself through words. You know, I know how to do that like through melodies, you know. So of course, like this album, not this project, I would say, like because of part 1 and the part 2, and I think it's more like how the listener will experience it. You know, how those songs will touch those people's heart. You know, yeah. And okay, like there's some like more aggressive songs like Inukshuk. So heavier, you know, like more technical, a little bit of fusion, and but there are like some very emotive songs like Mom's Lullaby, you know, like so it's how everything will, how that music will, how the music itself will tell the story behind it.
Yeah.
You know, like of course, like I was the one who wrote those songs. I know exactly what's going on behind it. Why those songs, like why I named those songs like that, why I have like those melodies together, how I have those chords organized together to feel like this or like that. For example, Mom's Lullaby is a very emotive song, but it's still very happy, very like uplifting, right? Because of the chords, like major chords, and there's the choir, and there's that intro with the baby, and there's also very dark songs like Tales of a Changing Life. You know, so but what was behind it? You know, of course, like for other people feel it the same way that I did will be hard. But that's
true of a song with lyrics, though.
Exactly. But actually, that's what I want. You know, that's exactly what I want. I want to let my music touch touch the peoples, and how they feel with it. Actually, I would love to hear from people what they feel with my music, how the story actually is touching them in some way.
See, that's so cool too, because there's two types of artists. There's artists that, they have their meaning to their songs and they expect you to, assimilate to that meaning. And then there's artists like you and many other artists that put your own meaning to it, because you have your own meaning, but for a song to be successful, in my opinion, is that it has to have meaning to me. Yeah, maybe it has meaning to you, but if it doesn't have meaning to me, it's not going to hit there. It may be okay. It may be an okay song, but it has to hit there. And there's like certain songs, like they hit me a certain way, and surely not the way that the artist, it was hitting them.
Yeah.
And that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because we're both benefiting from it.
Exactly. There are even some songs that they are kind of emotional for us, for us like listeners, and probably the who wrote the song, the artist who wrote the song while he was like having a beer or whatever, who knows,
right? Right. And, you've worked with a bunch of great musicians. Now, here's something interesting to me. I'd kind of like to know your viewpoint as an artist. Okay, so like one of the musicians you worked with is Kiko from Megadeth. And I've known Dave since I was at the first Metallica show ever, and I met him.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I've always been in awe of Mustaine's guitar playing. But then I'm like, wow, he always gets these like super great guitarists. And even though he's somebody that has ego, which is something you need anyway, I don't mean it in a bad way. I think that's why he's not still in Metallica. There was too much ego between him, James, and Lars. That's too much ego in one band. You need a little less, but the thing is I'm like, wow, to me, he really cares about the music, because instead of just caring about his guitar playing, he brings on people equally or better than him with no ego involved, and lets them shred the lead at times.
Yeah.
And a lot of times. And that always that puts me in awe of him in that way. And what's your viewpoint on stuff like that?
Yeah, I really like giving the freedom to the musicians to do their thing.
Yeah.
And I think also like the quality of the music, it's related to that freedom that the musicians have, to add their touch to the music, even though like I play like instrumental music, and like my guitar is still like in the center of everything, like there's some songs, for example, even Tales of a Changing Life, really long song, but with a long introduction, like with the orchestrations. Like when I had the solo section, I was like, okay, am I going to do everything? I was like, okay, no, there's already a lot of guitar here, so I'm gonna do something with the keyboards, kind of like back and forth solos, right? Like something like Deep Purple used to do a lot, right? So and I like giving that freedom to them, because I know that they will add their touch to it, and the music will get better. It will be better. Actually, the only instrument I would say, because I kind of like wrote everything, like of course like the guitars, I wrote everything, but even like the basses, I gave them some ideas, but mostly the drums, I wrote most of it, because actually I started playing drums when I was like 12. And I switched to guitar later when I was like 13, 14. And so I don't play drums anymore, but I know how the instrument works, And I know how when you use the cymbals and the crash and and the grooves, So I had like I always have a kind of like very, very, I would say like an advanced idea of the drums, but I always give them the freedom to do whatever they want, because I know that they are drummers, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not the drummer, so
Right.
I'm not going to do any better than them, you know, or even the keyboard player. Okay, so I gave him a lot of ideas, you know, and also on the bass, but I know that they are better than me playing those instruments, you know?
Nice. Yeah.
And the same way will be the opposite. Like when I have to record the guitars for other artists, for example, they give me the freedom to do whatever I want, or like just touch my style to that, you know. So, and that's exactly what I wanted from them, you know. Give me that, and also I know, like I'm 100% sure, and the songs, they sound like that. It's not only because of my guitars, but also because of them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Absolutely. And by the way, so it's funny you mentioned about you started on drums, because I played drums for 9 years before I switched to guitar.
Whoa.
And then I switched to singing thrash metal, and I sucked at all three.
I don't believe you.
Oh no, I totally, or else I might be doing it today. It was the same thing though, not practicing enough. Like, okay, with the singing, I didn't sing properly, because if you sing thrash metal without using your throat properly, you're not going to last too long. Like sometimes now on my show, I'll sing a song, I can barely get through one song, you know, but if you're trained properly to sing that way, it doesn't hurt, you know, because you're doing it right. And that's the same with everything. Drums. Oh, I so hated working on the practice pad. You know, like, give me a real drum set. Like, and so that was always me. I was the typical of, I don't want to put in the work. I just want to be a rock star, man. And that's why we are in the world we are today, with rock stars don't exist anymore, because really musicianship is what the goal should be, not rock star. And that is, I think we're making a comeback with that. I'm finding with a lot of interviews I'm doing, is musicianship is coming back. It was gone for a while. Like, stuff was so basic and no real musicianship. And I think it's making a comeback. And artists like you that are brave enough to do the longer songs in 2024, you know, are making a comeback. And I think people are actually digging it. I think the younger generation coming up, they're sick of the bubblegum rock. You know, it's not even bubblegum pop anymore. It's bubblegum rock. And with people like you, you know, and other real musicians, they're coming to appreciate something that maybe the generations that are into that bubblegum rock never really listened to, you know. Yeah. Like, you know how many Gen Zers I've talked to that never heard of Pink Floyd? Oh, like it kind of blows my mind. How do you not know who Pink Floyd is? But that's what I'm talking about. But then you talk to the real young kids and they know.
Yeah.
So maybe we're making a comeback to real music.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because today I was watching, do you know Rick Beato, the YouTuber?
No, I don't.
No? Yeah, he was like a college professor.
Okay.
He taught at Berkeley, and he's like huge music channel, and he was talking about Mr. Beast.
Okay.
He's like the biggest YouTuber. Like, he was mentioned, like one of the Mr. Beast interview, the guy mentioned Prince, the guitar player.
Yeah.
And Mr. Beast, he didn't know about Prince, like, at all.
I did not know Prince.
Exactly.
That's that exactly dude could play more instruments than anybody I've ever known, I think.
Exactly. And that's what Rick was kind of like very disappointed. How you can't know anything about Prince? Have you ever heard like Purple Rain or Kiss? You know, like.
Well, you know, the thing is the music today came from that foundation. Exactly. And I think if you're going to be a musician, you need the foundation first. That's where I made the mistake. That drum pad is the foundation. Those scales are the foundation. And just like a house, you may not want to build the foundation. You just might want to decorate the house. But without the foundation, you don't have everything else.
Exactly. And you know what? I think it's also because of these younger kids, like they don't have the same passion. I remember when I was a kid, like when I was like 13, 14, when I was like getting more into like rock and metal, I was so passionate for it. I really want to know more bands, new bands. Okay, so I like Megadeth. Okay, so what is behind them? Like what bands Dave Mustaine used to listen to, or Dream Theater, for example. I love Dream Theater. So what bands that John Petrucci likes? Like, it's Rush, yes, King Crimson, Genesis, Marillion, and I think they are not that curious anymore, to know what is the foundation of that sound, of that style.
I mean, you think about it. You mentioned metal. I talk about that because I'm a total metalhead, and I talk about it all the time that a lot of the newer metal follows like this algebraic equation formula to make metal instead of what metal was, and it's like, and that's why it's so simple. But the difference is the metalheads during the 80s, the metal bands, the Megadeths, the Metallicas, the Slayers, their foundation was everybody we're mentioning. There was no foundation of a thrash metal band. There was no foundation of these genres we have now. So the foundation was the same for everybody. Everybody's foundation was what they now call classic rock.
Yeah.
And Led Zeppelin, Cream, Mountain, Kiss, the Beatles, and I can't even believe there's kids nowadays that don't know who the Beatles are.
Yeah.
How do you not know who the Beatles are? Like, you don't even have to like them, but you should know who they are. I mean, and to me, they were geniuses what they did, because if you look at their whole career, they went in basically every area you could go. That was the difference back then too. You take Elvis. Crossed multiple genres.
Yeah.
Beatles crossed multiple genres and sounds and experimentation. That was one thing that I shouldn't have listened to my dad, but when I started playing the guitar, I was like, I didn't know what I was doing, so I was just experimenting to see what sounds I could get out of the guitar. And he's the one that sees like, you suck, you shouldn't even you should give that up because you don't know how to play. And he didn't understand what I was doing. I was trying to find out, like you were even indicating before, what sounds I can make. Because otherwise, how are you going to create music if you're just basing it on everything else you heard?
Exactly. And you know what? You mentioned about Beatles. And what it's funny, like the kids that they know Beatles these days, it's because of their parents.
Right.
Because their parents like Beatles.
Yeah.
Or any other bands, or even like or when like, because I have like I teach like mostly the kids, and they're like between like 8 years old and 15 mostly, and I can see like the ones that really like rock, for example, it's because of their parents.
Yeah. Well, and that is the difference nowadays too, because I remember when I was a teenager, probably you too, there's no way my parents would ever go to the shows I was going to.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And nowadays, like I bring my grandkids, man. And so you're absolutely correct. That's something I've talked about recently. That's very interesting about how, this is like the first time I think in history that parents and kids, they like the same music.
Yeah. I didn't like the same music of my parents did.
Right. I didn't.
I didn't have that influence of my parents.
I had my older brother. Okay. So it's funny because I was interviewing John Lodge from the Moody Blues recently. And I told him, I'm like, listen, I had a brother that was 11 years older than me. I know about you because I stole his Moody Blues albums and listened to them when I was a little kid. And he's like, yeah, we're that band. Almost everybody has that story of their older sibling. That's how they found out about us. And so, yeah, it wasn't the parents. Nowadays, it's the parents.
Yeah.
Like,
because we are the parents now, right?
Right. Like,
it's our turn.
I got to hide my albums if my kids or grandkids come here because they're going to want them. Whereas before, like my parents, Like, yeah, no. I know if I never hear that again, it won't be too soon. You know, and I that is the one cool part about nowadays, I think, because you didn't have that then.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that foundation, like when if you were teaching me guitar way back when, I would come to you and say, hey, I want to play like Jimmy Page. I want to play like Randy Rhoads. I want to play like, Leslie West. I want to play like Eric Clapton. And nowadays, what I have to ask you is, do the kids even have an idol that they ask that they want to play like?
No.
See?
They have no reference at all.
See, that's the difference. Because there's not really a lot of standouts nowadays. No. You don't have that. Like there's bands that you could love and you wouldn't name any of the musicians. Yeah. Whereas like, I remember I knew the members of every member of the band.
Oh, me too.
You know?
Me too.
It's like, even the people you wouldn't think you would know type of thing. The other thing I think I have too, that you probably have is I have this amazing ability, no matter what song comes on the radio, I can hear the first second of it and I pretty much know what it is. Yeah. And I also probably know all the lyrics too.
Oh yeah.
Because I had the lyrics in front of me and I would listen to the album over and over again and read along the lyrics the whole time instead of trying to guess what it said. Oh, yeah. Nowadays that the kids just guess what it says and usually are wrong.
Yeah.
So
funny.
Right? Yeah. So the album was released on the 18th of October. And tell everybody how they can connect to you on socials, on the web, and how they can get the album or check out all your YouTube videos and everything.
So my website's www.rodrigues.net. Okay, it's Rodrigues with S at the end. It's not Z. Rodrigues with S.
Oh, and I'm going to correct that because I thought I saw it. See, I knew I was doing something wrong. See, that's mental programming because when I created this title here that nobody will see because it's just for the recording, I kept saying, looking back and forth, because I was like, it's spelled differently. I better make sure I spell it right. And still in my head, it was automatic. I put a Z.
No, but you know what? Actually, it's not wrong. Just because Rodrigues with Z at the end, it's Spanish.
Yeah.
And Rodrigues with S at the end is Portuguese.
It's Portuguese.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring something up earlier. You know how many people here in Florida think all the Brazilian people here speak Spanish and will actually start speaking Spanish to them, and it is interesting that nobody really knows that. And I do know that. Okay. And I thought it was cool also on your website that on your About You, it had it in English and Portuguese.
Yeah.
And so I know how that is because I have a bunch of Brazilian friends and it's like, sometimes it's so annoying to them. People just like start speaking Spanish. I'm like, yeah, we don't speak Spanish.
Actually, it depends because like I can't understand the
it's
Spanish
close.
From South America. From Mexico, I can't. Just a different accent. I really can't understand. But what's funny? Here, people think I'm French because of my accent.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And it's funny too because you mentioned that I go to Costa Rica a lot, and I was just telling this story recently. I was at a restaurant and this girl was serving me, and I looked up at her. I'm like, "You're Argentinian, aren't you?" And she looked at me because I'm a gringo. So, how do you know? Your accent. I can totally tell the difference in your Spanish. And even speaking English with your Spanish accent, because the Argentinians, they enunciate everything very strongly. That's why it's easier for me to understand an Argentinian because they enunciate everything. Every other part of Spanish, they like combine words and eliminate vowels. So if you're not really fluent, you don't know what they're saying and they're doing it so fast. Yeah. And they're also very loud and they speak kind of hard. They have this hard accent, and I'm from New York and New Jersey, so like I assimilate to that anyway. They remind me of New Yorkers.
Oh, okay, that's here like because of the accent, I think people they think that I'm French because of Quebec, because Quebec they speak French, right? And yeah, many times they think, oh, you're French right now. I'm not French. I speak French a little bit, but it's not.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so you were talking the social media. Yeah.
Yeah.
So social media, Rod Rodrigues official, like Instagram, TikTok, and I'm very active on social media. My YouTube channel, Rod Rodrigues, I have the videos there. I try to be as active as possible there too. And also my albums on Spotify and also my Bandcamp. You guys can find me there. I have like physical copies there. I have songbook with all the tabs that the guitar players can learn the songs with backing tracks. Cool. And yeah,
I love it. See, that's so old school to me. I love it. That should be new school. Like musicians would be a lot better if we had the old days where you had all that stuff that you're giving right now. You know?
Yeah, indeed. Because you know what, like I grew up with all of that, you know, like I still have a lot of songbooks of my favorite artists that I have, like the original ones, like the physical songbooks, you know.
I remember going to a record store and I would buy songbooks of bands and try to learn how to play by that.
Oh yeah, and you know what? I have a funny story. I have two very special albums for me. One, it's Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force. It was a big changing for me. It was a game changing for sure.
Right.
And Dream Theater's Awake. Those two albums. Because like before Rising Force, like my favorite guitar players were like Marty Friedman, Alex Koenig, and I was like more into like thrash and death metal. And then I listened to Rising Force. I was like, wow, what is this? You know? And then Dream Theater came out. I remember when I heard Dream Theater the first time, was that radio show back in Brazil. That was like 1994. And they were playing the demos, or like I don't know, the demos or the songs they were about to release of that album. And I used to listen to that show every week because I really wanted to know new bands, right? That was the only way we have, right? The radio shows or MTV or whatever. I didn't have MTV at home, but I would listen to those radio shows like every week, and I had like my tape there ready. Okay, we are going to play like this new song of this band. I would like record it and listen to it later, you know. And then they played this was 3 or 4 songs from the Awake album.
Yeah.
And when I think they played the first song was The Mirror, like with 7 strings. I was like, what is this? I was like, man, I've never heard anything heavy like that, because back in the day, I think the only one who played with 7 strings was Steve Vai with White Snake. But he didn't play it that heavy, right? And I think Marv the Angel also played it, right? But it was heavier, right? Like faster, and then you couldn't actually hear the 7th string. And when I heard that, I was like, "What is this?" And then the keyboards, the kind of dark, and also the way that the singer is singing the song, that was a totally game changing for me, you know.
Nice.
So I have like the Rod before listening to Awake, and the Rod after listening to Awake.
Wow.
You know? And I got like, really, I fell in love for the band after that, you know?
Wow.
And the album didn't come out. You know, I think the album came out in September, and we couldn't have the CDs there. You know, it took like at least like a month or 2 months to get there.
Right.
You know? And I remember back in the day, there were like, so you could like rent CDs. Can I believe it? We could rent CDs. And I remember the Christmas of 1994, I found that album, Dream Theater's Awake, and I rented, you know, and I listened to that album like on a repeat. Like I would go to bed playing that album on a repeat, and then I would like wake up with that album playing, you know, like that was for days, like at least like 5 days, you know. That was like complete game. Really, that was a big game changing in my life. Was that album? After that album, I kind of like got more like open-minded about music, and I started listening to other bands like Angra, for example, Kiko's old band, you know, had a huge impact in me too. Later, I had the opportunity to have a few lessons with him, and anyway, so after that album, I started listening to different kind of music, and also got more into like instrumental music too, like Steve Vai, Yngwie, Satriani, and all those guys, and later like fusion, like Alan Holdsworth, Scott Henderson, like jazz and whatever, And now these days I listen to anything, basically anything. I'm not a country guy though, or this pop these days. I really don't like the new pop,
right?
But,
that's why I like Mustaine though, because it's like jazz metal.
Kind of, yeah.
Right? Like you listen to that in Killing Is My Business, like Last Rites.
Oh yeah.
It's totally, And then I'm also a big Michael Schenker fan.
Oh, nice.
All us metalheads, we all started kind of with UFO. It's kind of funny because I saw something recently about that. I'm like, oh, that was true. Like so many metalheads, like UFO is the most unknown popular band there is. Somebody said that like recently because if you talk to every metalhead, they all like UFO.
Yeah.
And it's not really Metallica. It's not even really metal. Well, see, that's because like I was going to Metallica's first shows, so the reference was UFO.
Oh yeah.
To Metallica. Like, of course, Metallica is one of my favorite bands, and you can see by my shirt, I am a Slayer fan. Went to their first show ever, But like Slayer, they all played cover songs in the beginning of all the like British, heavy metal invasion stuff. So people don't realize like you use that, you have that, as we were talking before, you have that as the foundation, then you build on that. Yeah. So these new musicians today, what are they building on? If they don't know these other bands, what are they building on? Yeah. That's what I wonder.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And
you are badass.
Thank you.
Everybody's got to get your album or they can't listen to my show.
I'm trying. Thank you.
What final words you want to leave the listeners with?
So if you guys can listen to all the words we said here today, keep in mind everything, listen to your favorite artists, buy their albums, go to their shows, get their merch, don't like just skip the songs on the Spotify. I don't like this 3 seconds of the song. Listen to it.
Some of my favorite songs, if I only listened the first 3 seconds, I wouldn't even know them today. You mentioned Metallica. Can you imagine these kids listening to Battery?
Oh,
they wouldn't make it to the good part.
Exactly. Because it's one. How long is the intro?
It's like intro. 10 to 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so you would never know. That's the thing. My generation, we waited through that stuff because we knew something good was about to happen.
Exactly. And you know what? They probably think like, oh, but this song is called Battery, but it's kind of a ballad. Like
I know, right?
Dun, 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 dun.
Right? But see, that's the whole key to me. A good song builds up. It has a build up. And I think that's what's missing in songwriting today, because they've actually, I was talking to somebody about this, they've actually changed songwriting today to appeal to the track mentality. So it's like, get rid of the intros, get rid of the solos, get rid of the bridges. You're not going to have 3 verses. Now there's only 2.
Yeah.
Like, what's
sometimes
the point?
Sometimes the songs sometimes the songs begins with the chorus.
Right. Exactly. You gotta get right to the point.
Chorus. That's it.
Yeah, you gotta get right to the point.
Yeah.
Music's a journey, is my opinion, and that's not the journey. That's just, a temporary high. You want the full high? Listen to the whole album.
Exactly. And also the live shows. It's not the same as you watching on YouTube or a DVD or a Blu-ray. It's not the same experience at all.
I don't get people that go to live shows and watch it through their phone. Like, okay, I'm a journalist and I'm required to do, and I just do like a few seconds, okay? And that's what I do. But I could watch it on YouTube at home or I laugh. I go on tour and I do all these festivals. The people that are sitting in front of the big screen, not even near the stage, sitting down, watch it.
Yeah.
Do that at home.
Yeah.
You know, like live music. I'm a firm believer that if we didn't cut out the live music during that 2 years of the pandemic, we wouldn't be so pissed off right now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You need it. We need live music.
You need, and you know what? Sometimes I see when I go, I always go to concerts, and sometimes I see people like sitting right beside me on their TikTok while the guy's shredding, or
like,
and
really,
like, it's TikTok, not even filming it, but it's sitting there like,
why?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
I don't get it.
Like, oh my God,
yeah, you pay like $200 to get the ticket, You go there and
$200 to scroll through TikTok.
Yeah.
Like, I should start a new business. Pay me $200. You can come to my place and scroll through your TikTok. Well,
okay, that's a really good idea. I'm gonna keep that in mind.
There it is. Well, it's been a pleasure. You're a badass musician, and
thank you very much.
Thank you for taking the time to make great music, and thanks for being on the Adventures of Pipeman.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'll see you next time.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.